Do you know what nemesis means? A righteous infliction of retribution manifested by an appropriate agent. Personified in this case by an horrible cunt, me. Snatch wasn't just a stylish British crime caper, it was a chaotic battlefield where Hollywood stars collided with real criminals, where diamonds vanished from the set just like in the script, and where Brad Pitt learned an entirely fictional dialect that linguists still can't fully decipher. Behind Guy Ritchie's slick direction lurked production nightmares that nearly derailed the entire film. Jason Statham almost drowning during his underwater escape scene, a real-life London gangster threatening the crew, and Benicio del Toro walking off set after a heated argument that required emergency script rewrites. The film that defined cool for a generation was anything but cool behind the camera. Today I'm giving you 20 weird facts about Snatch that the studio has desperately tried to keep quiet for over 2 decades, and stick around for the bonus fact that will completely change how you see the film's most iconic scene. So grab your knuckle dusters and put the kettle on. It's time to reveal what really happened when Guy Ritchie assembled one of the most volatile casts in modern cinema. Number 1. Brad Pitt was only available for filming for a single week. When Guy Ritchie envisioned the character of Mickey O'Neill, the bare-knuckle boxing gypsy with an indecipherable accent, he never imagined landing Brad Pitt for the role. It wasn't strategic casting, it was desperate improvisation. Pitt, fresh off Fight Club's grueling shoot, had exactly 7 days available in his schedule. The production didn't reshape the character for Pitt. Instead, Pitt completely transformed for the role in record time. He arrived on set having already perfected his now legendary pikey accent, a dialect that doesn't actually exist in the real world. Ritchie had planned 36 scenes featuring Mickey, meaning Pitt had to shoot an average of 5 complex scenes daily, often jumping between different emotional states, and fight choreography within hours. We basically had to rearrange the entire shooting schedule around Brad's availability, recalls producer Matthew Vaughn. We shot his scenes in sequence from dawn until midnight each day. He never complained once, even when we asked him to stand in freezing water for hours during the caravan fire sequence. Number 2. The diamond at the center of the film's plot repeatedly went missing during production. The 4-carat diamond that drives Snatch's entire narrative wasn't just fiction, it was a very real, very expensive prop that caused production assistants to have actual nervous breakdowns. The diamond, worth approximately 15,000 pounds, about $22,000 at the time, disappeared from the set 3 separate times. It wasn't theft driving these disappearances, it was the film's own chaotic production schedule. During the scene where Frankie Four Fingers loses the diamond, in the gambling den, the prop was accidentally swept into a trash bin and taken to a London landfill. Production halted for 8 hours while crew members literally dug through garbage. On another occasion, Jason Statham, playing Bacon, pocketed the real diamond instead of the replica between takes, a method acting choice he failed to communicate to the props department. He drove home with it and only realized his mistake when costume designers called in a panic at 3 a.m. That bloody diamond caused more drama off-camera than on it, Ritchie later admitted. At one point, I seriously considered rewriting the script to make it about a missing watch instead. Number 3, the dogfighting scene sparked massive controversy and almost led to the film being banned in the UK. Snatch's brutal dogfighting sequence wasn't just simulated, it was almost too realistic. The British Board of Film Classification initially demanded the entire subplot be removed, threatening an outright ban if Ritchie refused. It wasn't CGI or clever editing that created those scenes. Ritchie employed retired fighting dogs rescued from actual criminal enterprises, working with animal trainers who had infiltrated London's underground dog-fighting rings to shut them down. The dogs, previously trained to fight, were now retrained to perform choreographed interactions that looked violent on camera but were actually completely harmless play behaviors. The production donated over £50,000 to animal rescue organizations specializing in rehabilitating fighting dogs, and several crew members ended up adopting dogs used in the film. The BBFC eventually permitted the scenes but required an extended disclaimer in the credits. "Those dogs had been through hell before we got them," said animal coordinator Mike Smith. The irony is that making a film depicting their abuse actually gave them a second chance. 3 of them became therapy dogs after filming Wrapped. Number 4, Vinnie Jones wasn't acting. He was essentially playing himself with minimal direction. Vinnie Jones didn't need to become Bullet-Tooth Tony. He was already frighteningly close to the character in real life. A notorious hardman footballer turned actor, Jones arrived on set with his own nickel-plated Desert Eagle handgun, which Ritchie incorporated into the film as Tony's signature weapon. During the bar confrontation scene, Jones was instructed to intimidate the 3 robbers. What appears on screen wasn't acting, but Jones genuinely terrifying the supporting actors. Ritchie kept the cameras rolling as Jones improvised most of his now iconic lines, including the big fuck-off shooting guns monologue. What audiences didn't know was that Jones's intimidation factor wasn't just for show. Several crew members refused to make eye contact with him on set, and a production assistant quit after Jones found his coffee wasn't made to his specifications. Ritchie later admitted he barely directed Jones at all. "You don't direct Vinny," Ritchie explained. "You just point the camera at him and make sure you've got enough film. The character wasn't written for him. He essentially wrote the character by just being himself, which is both brilliant and slightly worrying." Number 5. The infamous pig farm scenes led to 3 crew members being hospitalized. The pig farm where Brick Top disposes of bodies wasn't a set. It was a functioning pig farm in rural England where the animals hadn't been properly cleaned before filming began. The stench was so overwhelming that the first day of shooting had to be abandoned after multiple crew members vomited on equipment. It wasn't just the smell causing problems. The methane levels from decomposing waste became so high that special industrial fans had to be brought in between takes to prevent lightheadedness. Despite these precautions, 3 crew members were hospitalized with respiratory issues, and 1 camera operator fainted, destroying an expensive lens. Alan Ford, who played Brick Top, refused to use a stand-in despite the conditions, spending 14 hours in the squalor. The pigs themselves were far more aggressive than anticipated, repeatedly breaking through temporary barriers and disrupting carefully planned shots. "Those pigs were the real gangsters on set," Ford later recalled. Bricktop talks about how they can consume 2 pounds of uncooked flesh every minute, but after watching them demolish our craft services table in seconds, I think that's an underestimate. Number 6. Jason Statham performed his underwater escape scene without a stunt double, nearly drowning in the process. Before becoming an action superstar, Jason Statham gave us a glimpse of his future stunt work in Snatch's underwater car escape scene. What audiences don't realize is that Statham, playing Bacon, performed this dangerous sequence himself after the scheduled stunt double called in sick. It wasn't just brave, it was nearly fatal. The car sank faster than anticipated, and Statham's safety harness jammed as the vehicle filled with water. The panic you see on screen isn't acting, it's Statham legitimately fighting for his life. Emergency divers had to cut him free after he lost consciousness momentarily. Rather than take time to recover, Statham insisted on completing the scene that same day, diving back into the water tank just hours after his near-death experience. Ritchie later admitted he shouldn't have allowed it. Jason has this bulldog mentality where he refuses to quit, Ritchie said. It's what makes him perfect for action films, but it nearly cost us dearly. That scene looks seamless in the film, but it represents one of the most chaotic days of filming I've ever experienced. We were minutes away from having a very different, very tragic outcome. Number 7. The boxing matches featured real punches that sent Brad Pitt to the hospital. The bare-knuckle boxing scenes weren't just choreographed fights, they featured real contact. That left both actors and stunt performers with genuine injuries. Brad Pitt insisted on authenticity, refusing protective padding for his fight sequences, despite the production team's concerns. It wasn't method acting gone too far, it was actual fighting. During the scene where Mickey knocks out his opponent, Pitt was accidentally struck with a legitimate blow that broke his nose. Production shut down for 3 days while he received medical treatment. The crew tried to reschedule his remaining scenes to allow recovery time, but with his tight 7-day window, Pitt returned to set still visibly injured. The final fight scene, where Mickey refuses to go down, required 28 takes. By the end, Pitt could barely stand, having absorbed over a dozen accidental blows to the body. The exhaustion and pain visible on screen is entirely genuine. Brad wanted it to look real because the character's pain needed to be believable, explained fight coordinator Dave Foreman. But there's a fine line between realism and recklessness. We crossed that line several times, and I still feel guilty about some of the hits he took. Number 8. Real criminals were hired as extras and technical advisors, leading to actual criminal activities on set. Guy Ritchie's pursuit of authenticity led him to cast actual London criminals as extras and consultants. These weren't reformed criminals, they were active players in London's underworld who saw the film as an opportunity to network and scout locations. It wasn't just background color they provided, they delivered technical details on how heists, fights, and gambling operations really function. But this authenticity came at a cost. During filming at the gambling den, equipment worth over £20,000 disappeared. The security team later discovered that some of the consultant extras had been using their position to case the location for an actual robbery. More disturbing still, one consultant repeatedly threatened a production assistant who he believed had disrespected him, leading to the PA requiring a security escort for the remainder of the shoot. "We wanted the film to feel authentic," producer Matthew Vaughn later admitted, "but there were days when it felt like we were making a documentary with actors rather than a fictional film with some colorful extras. The line between filmmaking and actual crime got frighteningly blurry at times." Number 9. Benicio del Toro and Guy Ritchie had a fierce conflict that almost shut down production. Benicio del Toro, playing Frankie Four Fingers, walked off set after a heated argument with Ritchie over the interpretation of his character. It wasn't creative differences, it was a fundamental clash about the film's portrayal of addiction. Del Toro, whose own family had been affected by gambling addiction, found Ritchie's direction to play Frankie's gambling problem for laughs deeply offensive. The confrontation erupted during the filming of the diamond handoff scene with Del Toro, refusing to continue unless the script was modified to treat the addiction with more nuance. It wasn't just a brief tantrum. Del Toro disappeared for nearly 48 hours, during which time Ritchie seriously considered recasting the role or drastically reducing Frankie's screen time. Production halted entirely, costing an estimated £100,000 per day. Benicio brought an intensity that the rest of us weren't prepared for, Dennis Farina, who played Cousin Avi, recalled. "He wasn't being difficult for the sake of it, he was fighting for something he believed in. The film is better for that fight, even though it nearly derailed everything." Number 10. The famous Desert Eagle scene used a gun so powerful that it injured Vinnie Jones during filming. The iconic scene where Bullet-Tooth Tony intimidates the robbers with his Desert Eagle .50 used the actual firearm, not a prop or replica. The weapon's recoil was so severe that during rehearsals, it sprained Vinnie Jones' wrist and damaged his hearing temporarily. Hey, go ahead and like and subscribe because we're about to reveal how this injury actually improved the scene in a way nobody expected. When Jones delivers his famous line about replicas, the slight grimace you see isn't acting, it's Jones dealing with genuine pain while staying in character. It wasn't just Jones affected by the weapon. The production team underestimated the Desert Eagle's power, resulting in significant damage to the bar set during filming. Each blank fired created such concussive force that glasses would shatter even when not directly hit, forcing the props department to continually replace bar equipment between takes. "That gun wasn't a prop. It was a bloody cannon," Jones later said. "My ears were ringing for days, but the pain actually helped. Tony's supposed to be this hard bastard who's comfortable with serious hardware. After firing that thing, I didn't need to act tough. I was just trying not to show how much my wrist was throbbing." Number 11. The infamous Dags scene almost didn't make the final cut because test audiences couldn't understand it. Brad Pitt's unintelligible Dags scene, where Mickey asks if Turkish likes dogs, became one of the film's most quoted moments. Yet, studio executives fought to remove it after test audiences reported understanding less than 10% of Pitt's dialogue throughout the film. It wasn't just confusion, it was outright hostility. Early test screenings resulted in audience walkouts, specifically during Pitt's scenes with comment cards demanding subtitles or complaining that their film was broken. Sony Pictures insisted on cutting most of Mickey's dialogue, arguing that the character was alienating audiences. Ritchie stood his ground, countering that the audience's confusion perfectly mirrored Turkish and Tommy's bewilderment within the story itself. He fought particularly hard for the Dags scene, arguing it was crucial for establishing the cultural clash that drives much of the film's tension. "The studio didn't get that the audience isn't supposed to understand Mickey," Ritchie explained. "They're supposed to experience what it's like for Turkish and Tommy trying to navigate this completely foreign subculture. That confusion isn't a bug, it's the whole bloody point of those scenes." Number 12. The caravan fire scene destroyed an actual antique caravan that was a family heirloom. The dramatic scene where Mickey's mother's caravan burns wasn't achieved with movie magic. They actually torched a genuine 120-year-old Romani caravan. The production designer had acquired it from a Romani family who believed it would only be used for exterior shots and non-destructive scenes. It wasn't miscommunication, it was deliberate deception. The production team had been unable to find a convincing replica that would burn realistically on camera. When the family discovered their heirloom had been destroyed, they were devastated and threatened legal action against the production. To avoid scandal, the studio quietly paid the family £40,000, approximately 10 times what they had initially paid to use the caravan, and required them to sign non-disclosure agreements. Several crew members were so disturbed by the incident that they considered quitting. That caravan had survived 2 world wars only to be sacrificed for a 2-minute scene, revealed a production assistant who requested anonymity. The family had preserved it for generations. What we told them versus what we did, it's the most shameful thing I witnessed in my entire film career. Number 13, Alan Ford suffered a nervous breakdown while playing Bricktop. Alan Ford's portrayal of Bricktop is chillingly realistic because the role took a devastating psychological toll on the actor. Ford, known previously for more comedic roles, immersed himself so deeply in Bricktop's sadistic mindset that he began experiencing severe anxiety attacks and insomnia during filming. It wasn't just method acting. To prepare for the role, Ford interviewed former gangland enforcers and watched hours of police footage documenting real violence. The research left him deeply disturbed, particularly the pig farm execution methods, which were based on actual disposal techniques used by criminals. By the 3rd week of shooting, Ford was sleeping less than 3 hours nightly and would often be found muttering Bricktop's threatening monologues to himself between takes. The production team eventually hired a therapist to remain on set during Ford's scenes. I couldn't switch him off, Ford later admitted. "I'd go home and find myself standing in my kitchen at 3 a.m., still thinking like him, still speaking like him. My wife said she didn't recognize me anymore. Creating Bricktop nearly broke me. It took months after filming wrapped before I felt like myself again. Number 14. The diamond heist sequence was based on a real robbery that one of the technical advisors had participated in. The elaborate diamond heist that kicks off Snatch's plot wasn't invented by screenwriters. It was adapted from an actual robbery that occurred in Antwerp's Diamond District in 1995. The technical advisor who provided the details had intimate knowledge because he had been part of the crew that executed it. It wasn't just inspired by real events, it was a blueprint. The method of impersonating Hasidic Jews, the timing of the robbery during specific security shift changes, and even the multiple handoffs were all taken directly from the advisor's criminal past. The production team didn't realize the full truth until filming was nearly complete. When they discovered they had essentially recreated a real crime on film, lawyers were quietly brought in to ensure the production couldn't be accused of glorifying the specific robbery or revealing trade secrets of the diamond industry. Several details were subtly altered in post-production. "We thought we were getting authentic-sounding details," a producer later confessed. "What we didn't realize was that we were getting an actual confession on camera. When we figured it out, there was serious discussion about whether we needed to contact the police." Number 15. The famous replica guns used in the pawn shop robbery scene were actually dangerous converted weapons. The scene where Bullet-Tooth Tony explains the difference between replicas and real guns contains a dark production secret. The replica firearms used by the robbers weren't Hollywood props. They were actual converted weapons commonly used in UK crimes during the late 1990s. It wasn't just accurate set dressing. The armorer for the film had previously worked with UK police to identify converted weapons, and he sourced decommissioned guns that had been used in actual armed robberies. These weapons, originally starting as non-firing replicas, had been converted to fire real ammunition by underground gunsmiths. The UK police temporarily released these confiscated weapons from evidence lockers specifically for the film, believing the scene could raise public awareness about the dangerous trend of replica conversions. Every person handling these weapons on set required special clearance. Those guns had history, the film's armorer revealed years later. They'd been used in actual crimes before being converted back to non-firing condition for our shoot. There's a moment where Vinny examines one and gives this knowing look. That wasn't scripted. He recognized what he was holding and understood its significance better than most of the cast. Number 16. Dennis Farina developed a genuine hatred for London that mirrored his characters. Dennis Farina's portrayal of Avi's disdain for London wasn't acting. It reflected the actor's own growing hatred for the city during the difficult shoot. A former Chicago police officer turned actor, Farina experienced a series of unfortunate incidents in London that fostered authentic contempt. It wasn't just normal travel frustrations. Farina was robbed twice during production, had his hotel room broken into, and developed a severe respiratory infection that he blamed on London's weather and pollution. His famous line about London's bad food, worse weather, and Mary fucking Poppins was actually improvised during a take when he was particularly miserable. Ritchie recognized that Farina's genuine discomfort could enhance the character and began scheduling his most London-critical scenes on days when the actor was visibly at his most irritated. The production team would sometimes deliberately make Farina's day more difficult before filming his scenes expressing hatred for the city. "Every time you see Avi looking miserable in London, that's not acting," revealed a production assistant. Dennis was genuinely counting the minutes until he could leave England. By the end of production, he had sworn never to return to London, and as far as I know, he kept that promise for the rest of his life. Number 17. The bookmaker's robbery scene led to an actual police response during filming. The scene where Saul, Vinny, and Tyrone robbed the bookmakers triggered a massive police response when nearby residents, unaware that filming was taking place, reported an actual armed robbery in progress. 3 police units, including an armed response team, surrounded the location with weapons drawn. It wasn't just a minor misunderstanding. The production had failed to properly notify local authorities and residents about the planned sequence involving masks and fake weapons. When officers burst onto the set, they initially detained several actors and crew members at gunpoint before the situation was clarified. The incident nearly shut down production entirely as police considered pressing charges for wasting police resources and creating public panic. Only the intervention of a well-connected producer prevented formal action against the production. 1 minute we're filming, the next there are real guns pointed at us by police who are shouting instructions, recalled Lenny James, who played Saul. It was terrifying because in those first few moments, they didn't know we were making a film and we didn't know who they were. Someone could have been seriously hurt because of a paperwork oversight. Number 18. The distinctive editing style was partially developed to hide critical continuity errors. Snatch's hyperkinetic editing style, with its rapid cuts, freeze frames, and speed ramping, wasn't just an artistic choice. It was a practical solution to hide numerous continuity problems caused by the chaotic shooting schedule and Brad Pitt's extremely limited availability. It wasn't planned visual innovation. During early rough cuts, Ritchie discovered alarming continuity errors in nearly every scene. Changing weather conditions, mismatched props, and even actors' injuries appearing and disappearing between shots. Rather than reshoot, which was impossible due to budget constraints, Ritchie and editor John Harris developed the film's distinctive editing style as camouflage. The speed ramping technique, where the film suddenly accelerates or decelerates, was specifically introduced to disguise moments where scenes shot weeks apart had to be spliced together. The frequent use of textual interludes and character title cards served to reset audience attention, making continuity jumps less noticeable. What began as problem-solving became the film's signature, Harris later admitted. We were basically trying to distract the audience from noticing that Brad Pitt's bruises keep changing, or that it's suddenly raining in the middle of a scene that started in sunshine. The style people love about Snatch was born from pure panic in the editing room. Number 19. Guy Ritchie rejected Leonardo DiCaprio for the role of Frankie Four Fingers. Before Benicio del Toro was cast as Frankie Four Fingers, Leonardo DiCaprio, fresh off Titanic fame, aggressively pursued the role, even offering to reduce his usual fee. Ritchie rejected him immediately without even arranging an audition. It wasn't about talent or star power. Ritchie believed DiCaprio's overwhelming fame would unbalance the ensemble nature of the film. More significantly, he worried that DiCaprio's heartthrob image would make Frankie's violent death unpalatable to audiences and potentially alienate DiCaprio's massive fan base. The rejection created tension with the studio, who saw DiCaprio's interest as a marketing goldmine. Sony executives pressured Ritchie to reconsider, arguing that DiCaprio's involvement would guarantee a larger budget and wider release. Ritchie threatened to walk from the project if forced to cast him. Leo was too recognizable, Ritchie later explained. The whole point of Frankie is that he disappears partway through and the audience follows the diamond instead of the character. With Leo in that role, audiences would be waiting for his return rather than following the narrative forward. Sometimes the biggest name isn't the right name. Number 20. The film's iconic soundtrack was assembled just 3 days before the final cut was due. Snatch's pitch-perfect soundtrack, featuring tracks from Madonna, Oasis, and the Stranglers, was hastily compiled in a 72-hour panic when the original score was rejected by test audiences. The film was literally days away from delivery when the entire audio approach was scrapped. It wasn't planned musical brilliance. The original score, a traditional orchestral arrangement, was described by test audiences as completely wrong and working against the film. With delivery deadlines looming, music supervisor Niven Howie locked himself in a hotel room with Ritchie's record collection and began frantically assembling alternative tracks. Rights clearances, typically a months-long process, were negotiated in hours. Madonna, then married to Ritchie, personally intervened to secure several tracks from reluctant artists. The final mix was completed just 4 hours before the delivery deadline, with some tracks being adjusted while the film was being uploaded for distribution. We were literally cutting and fitting music tracks while couriers waited in the lobby to take the final print to Sony, Howie recalled. No one slept for those 3 days. What's amazing is that the soundtrack feels so meticulously chosen, when in reality it was pure desperation and adrenaline driving those selections. Sometimes panic produces magic. Bonus fact: the tension-filled scene where Turkish and Tommy meet Bricktop for the first time contains a secret that the production kept hidden for years. When Bricktop's henchman aims his shotgun at Tommy and Turkish asks, "Protection from what, Tommy?" the shotgun contained an actual live round. It wasn't recklessness, it was deliberate manipulation. Alan Ford, Bricktop, and the actor playing his henchman were the only ones who knew the gun contained a live shell. The armorer had been convinced to load a single round after Ford argued it would create genuine fear in the scene. The cameras captured Jason Statham and Stephen Graham's authentic terror when they realized an actual loaded weapon was being pointed at them. Immediately after the scene, the armorer was fired and the incident was covered up to avoid insurance complications and potential criminal charges. Years later, Graham admitted that his visible sweat and trembling voice weren't acting. He genuinely feared for his life during that take. What happened that day crossed every line of professional conduct, a crew member later revealed under condition of anonymity. It created a genuinely great moment on film, but it could have ended in tragedy. That scene works because those aren't actors pretending to be scared. They're men who genuinely believe they might die in the next few seconds. Snatch wasn't just a film that changed British cinema, it was a production that operated on the razor's edge between controlled chaos and complete disaster, mirroring the very criminal underworld it depicted. 25 years later, its influence is undeniable, from its visual language that redefined editing techniques to its quotable dialogue that still permeates pop culture. What audiences see on screen, the diamonds, the fights, the double crosses, pales in comparison to the behind-the-scenes reality. The film succeeded not despite these chaotic elements, but because of them, capturing an authenticity that comes only when fiction and reality blur beyond recognition. If you enjoyed these revelations about Snatch, hit that subscribe button and comment below with which film you want us to expose next. After all, in the world of filmmaking, as Bricktop would say, you're always going to have problems lifting a body in one piece.